We're live. It says we're live. Fantastic. Hey, everybody. Happy Monday. I hope you guys had a great weekend as we drag ourselves kicking and screaming towards the end of 2023. This is, I don't know if you are a parent, obviously this is, oh God, no, I didn't, oh, immediately didn't turn the volume off on my phone, and an ad started playing just now because I'm monitoring the chat for Ecopolis Scarlet Covenant. What kind of weeby crap is this? Jesus. All right. That just happened. Yeah, there's our stuff going on. Anyway, as I was saying, yeah, this is the end of the year. This is the most you got to get stuff done, scramble to the finish line time of every year for me, because there's obviously all kinds of stuff coming up. Want to make sure Christmas is cool. Got to get ready to like host my family, make a big dinner, and make sure the kids get something cool and exciting that they like, and also all this on top of it, because there's always stuff coming at the end of the year. And that's what I've been spending my weekend on. I took some time off on the weekend. We did all of our like holiday prep stuff. So went and got a Christmas tree, decorated the house. I spent most of last week bagging because it finally stopped raining here. It rained for like almost the entire month of November. So I didn't bag up all my leaves and stuff. I didn't even clean my lawn. So I did all that stuff too. So a lot of exciting non-hobby things happening. And we also did some editing. I put up Grimdark Media for Event Horizon, which was super fun, which I loved. We've started editing the next episode, which is Hard Boiled, and then which finishes most of the cycle because it goes movie, book, game, and then you guys picked Rangers of Shadow Deep this week, which is going to be fantastic. So let's sound off and see who is in the chat. We'll take some questions from the mailbag and then just hang out. So you hang out for an hour and see what everybody's doing. And who we got here? We got Malev here. We got Nick here. We got Paul here. We got Ralph Shemin here. Everybody's hanging out in the chat right now. We got 15 people. We haven't broken 20, which is, you know, Ralph just said it's a lot quieter here this week. How come? Yeah, because I actually did this properly. So for those of you watching this on Tuesday in the future, this is the Monday live show where I hang out with my patrons and take questions and generally just chill and take a break for a minute. Take a breather as I prep for all the other stuff coming up this week. And what am I doing this week? Tomorrow I'm recording the Rangers of Shadow Deep Grimdark Media, as well as a special episode of Rangers of Shadow Deep. I'm going to write a patrons-only mission for it, a Journey into the Grimdark Rangers mission, which I'll put up on Patreon as well. And then in the PM, Mike Loudon's coming down, and we're going to switch it up from Warcry. We're going to play some Kill Team, which we haven't done in a hot minute, and I'm prepping for that right now. I'm painting training models in the back. That's what I just took a break from. I've been going blind painting stuff. And then after that's done, I got more things to paint. Because on Thursday, Chase is coming down to play the one ITS 15 game I haven't played, which is Evacuation. And I'll paint some new models to play that. And then I've got Infinity Games with Greg again on Friday too. And one of the two of them is going to help me get that insulation so I can finish insulating the back while in the studio. And then what's the saying I'm doing on the weekend? Oh yeah, it's Christmas. So I'm going to get my house ready for Christmas and all that. That's my plan for this week. And that is what's going on. So let's take some questions from the mailbag, see what everybody asked last week that I didn't get to, and this week coming up. We've got, all right, first one is from Dario Tomter in Norway. He says, my mind is constantly racing between the games to play and painting projects to focus on. Wait, did I do this one last week? Oh, no, I didn't. My mind is, Dario asks like 3 questions in a row usually, and I take one each week, and I can never remember if I've done his questions or not. So this one is, my mind is constantly racing between what games to play and what projects to focus on, which becomes frustrating since I don't get to fully commit to one game or project. I find that my motivation often drops off after getting the ball rolling on a project, and I'm off to the next thing that catches my interest. If you, Ash, were to stage a hypothetical intervention, how would that play out, and or what stage of advice would you give me about how to make contract? No, I swear to God I answered this question last week and maybe just didn't delete it. I think I didn't. Anyway, my intervention would be all about timing it to getting to hang out with friends. Mine is always like I set myself manageable goalposts and milestones and goals, and then work to those milestones and goals. So like with the Warcry stuff, I wanted to play Warcry. I wanted to do a little campaign thing. So I would set like myself that goal of like, well, Mike and I are going to come down. We're going to play the next campaign arc, and I'll paint a few models for that. And that kind of scratches that itch and makes me feel like I'm accomplishing something in that game. And then I try and be like choosy as to what I'm going to actually get excited about. And then the other half of that is I will read rule books and like acquire games and stuff, and then just let my friends decide when it's time we're going to play them. And that means like them saying, hey, this is something I'm excited about this month and this week. This is what I've been painting. And I go, oh, cool. That's what I'll work on this week to get something done to hit like that next kind of like gate of like, yeah, I really wanted to do this, so let's do it. And because I'm not sure I didn't answer that question already last week, I'm going to take Dario's other question, which is I was a bit late getting into Dark Age miniature game as the product was being bought out and retailers were getting rid of the remaining stock, but I'm happy to own a fully painted 2-player starter set for the game. What was your experience playing the game, the community, and any closing thoughts on why it got put on hiatus or dropped by Cool Mini or not? Would a release be something you'd be excited about? So I am an unabashed stan for Dark Age and have been actually since like it first dropped in I think 2000 because I love the artist, love Brom. Gerald Brom's this incredible grimdark artist who, if you've ever seen a piece of Gerald Brom art, it's like instantly recognizable. But he did some of my favorite TSR art in the late 90s, early 2000s, especially for Dark Sun, which was a module, a campaign system for like D&D that was the most like survival horror shit I think they ever did. It was kind of, I don't want to say it was competing with like World of Darkness and vampire stuff, because obviously that's a whole other thing removed from it. But it definitely felt more adult as a setting, and like the granularity of like your survival was a big part of it. And I found that really compelling. And then the art was like crazy dark, like super, super dark. And I loved that stuff. So for me, Dark Age, when it came along as a miniature game, because I'm such a miniature game guy, like I'd read the novels for Dark Sun, seeing a miniature game in that same sort of vein, but having it be like sci-fi post-apocalyptic, I was all in. I love the models. It was actually like a very early non-metallic metal paint thing too. So it felt kind of edgy and cool at the time, because Jen Haley was like one of the greatest artists, I think, of her generation. And she made a name for herself doing this like North American non-metallic metal style that had kind of been pioneered with Rackham in France. And it felt very, like it felt avant-garde. Like you felt like you were part of something cool kind of back then if you were into it. And because of such a low model count game, I immediately became obsessed with like trying to learn how to paint that way and playing those games. So I think what you have in that setting now with that game is you have it being collectible. I loved everything that Dave did at the end of the life cycle, and I like everything they kind of did at the beginning of the life cycle. It had such a tumultuous existence though, because Dave Dias, who is one of the founders of Cool Mini or Not, it's his thing. It's his thing he brought together basically with all these really talented people, and it was kind of their flagship game for a long time. But they've transitioned as a business into being a very different kind of business, where they do a lot of board games, they do a lot of Kickstarter and crowdfunded stuff, and obviously a lot of what they do now is more, I would say, miniature adjacent than miniature gaming, right? Like Zombicide and even like the miniature games for Song of Ice and Fire. The miniatures are nice, but they're board game pieces primarily, and the games are less about the presentation of the miniatures as like art, which is very funny to still have them be called Cool Mini or Not. Like that's kind of what they call it. They're called CMON now as opposed to Cool Mini or Not, because the minis are, I don't want to say they're secondary, but they're mass produced. And they're a different kind of thing. And everything's miniature inclusive, and they do cool miniatures for what they are, but they're not like the prestige miniature company that they kind of started off as. And so I'm okay to have them move on and for me to collect their old stuff. And I think that's super cool and different, because they're not really the same company anymore. If it came back, I think it'll probably come back in a format much more similar to what they do today. I doubt we'll ever see the prestige mini thing again. And I'll definitely check it out. And if Brom's an artist that's involved in it, I'll be excited about it. But for the most part, you know, like, I'm able to like compartmentalize when something's of an age and a time and an experience for me, and then to like put it down afterwards. So let's see what the chat says about that, because maybe the chat has something interesting to tell me about Braum and their experiences with Braum, because it's entirely possible. Who else is here? Gizmo Math Boy's here. Talis Kane's here. Chris Banks is here. Mike Forson's here. And what is everybody saying about that stuff? Mark Forson says, I haven't watched Grimdark Media yet, but I loved Event Horizon. And Nick Butler said, I never did Rangers of Shadowdeep. Interesting. Gizmo Math Boy says, any more making of videos of the studio in the pipeline? There are. The problem is I keep working on stuff that... So the problem is I keep having these big projects that I can't... So what's gotten in the way of it, basically, there's been 4 big projects in the pipeline. The first one you've already seen, so I can talk about it now, which is the Legions one. There was just stuff everywhere from these projects, and I'm trying to get through them. But when it's... I can't really just pack it up and put it away. And so it's basically like prevented me from doing a bunch of studio videos, because I need to like completely tear down a bunch of project space and put it back together. I can't really walk through this place right now without you guys seeing something you're not supposed to see yet. And that's going to change hopefully in the next couple of weeks. I'll be able to walk you guys through it. And I'll, at least my plan is I have a project I'm working on for this week that I will then pack away at the end of this week. And then I'm going to try and shoot a video in between starting the next project and this project, where I can walk everybody through the studio and they can see everything, and I can just keep things in boxes in the short term. But yes, I've been remiss on that for a minute, but we're mostly done in the back now, which is great. What are your thoughts about GW's announcement today of a contract with Amazon? I mean, it's kind of a nothing burger, because they'd already said they'd signed an agreement in principle. This just means the ink's dry, and that they've got like a picture deal. It means the money's come through. So whatever money they're putting up and whatever money Amazon's putting up to make it happen now is like agreed upon, and they can start spending money on projects. But like, I mean, and they were pretty clear, like this is like a 2 to 3 year process, like nothing's coming tomorrow. But let's get scuttlebutt going is kind of what that post means. Cause this is now we're into like the production stage of like, we've drafted writers, we're doing ideas, we're going to go through this endless process of like approval, not approval, approval, not approval. And they're going to put together probably a 5 to 10 year plan, probably a 5 year plan, cause it probably won't be like they'll have 10 years in principle, but they won't have 5 years of actual like what's proven to be popular for live action stuff, I would imagine, and some animated stuff. Amazon makes all kinds of stuff. They just dump money into studio projects. So I think it's cool. It just doesn't mean anything. Like there's nothing. It's just it's interest for interest's sake, and it's the kind of post where you're just trying to create a bunch of dialogue so that the stakeholders on both sides, which means like Amazon shareholders and Games Workshop shareholders, can go, oh cool, it was worth doing, and everybody feels good about it for the amount of time it takes for something real to happen where they actually start making money on it. Because right now they're in the spending money stage, and so what they need to do is they need to show the shareholders that people are excited about this, and so these kinds of posts are going to keep coming, while the money people basically need to be kept happy during the development process, which is how studio shit gets made. This isn't like an indie. This isn't going to be an indie picture. So this is going to be a very 4-quadrant. We need to keep shareholders happy on both sides of the table. We've signed an agreement for this now process. So I think you'll see a lot of loud, proud commentary about this stuff happening, and like I don't want to say community inclusion, because that's not really what it is. It's more like getting positive reinforcements into the world to keep the momentum of this kind of thing going, because it takes a long time to do. So we'll see. Then there'll be lots of announcements. They'll try and do like a Kevin Feige. I almost guarantee if this goes well, they'll try and emulate like a Kevin Feige like walkout thing at Warhammer Fest next year, where they try and outline. They'll show a stinger, they'll show a trailer, they'll show like what's coming, and they'll do like a big like pipeline of like, here's the plans. So that's my thoughts on it. I think it's a whole lot of we've now agreed to spend the money. Let's keep the money people. Let's rattle the cage of like the people who are going to watch this, who are our potential customers, and make the money people like be like comfortable with whatever they've just signed. Gizmo Math Boy says, the chaos part before you get organized. Yeah, it's terrible. Talos Kane says, similar, are we getting any more Forbidden Psalm soon? I was really enjoying the last War stuff, but can't wait to see the tank get made. That's my plan for the New Year's. One of my first things, I want to finish up Forbidden Psalm Last War. And that'll make space for probably the next time I do Forbidden Psalm will be whenever Kev delivers his like Ultimate Edition book. I'll come back to it because I'm going to want to review that book and I'm going to want to make some content to go along with it. So I'll finish off Last War, and then once that's done, we'll get to like dive back into when that new big hardcover comes out. Yay, we got 20 people in the chat again. Hey, fantastic. Nick Butler says, oh, had I asked that question in the mailbag, but in a different tack. I'll jam tomorrow effectively. Get that hype train moving, Atragon X says. Yeah, this is... Expect lots of sizzle reels. I do think that's going to be... And like VFX Studio pitching their grimdark aesthetics. Yeah, I think that's going to be a big thing that we see in the next little while. Oh boy, I can't wait for Amazon's Warhammer starring Chris Pratt as the Emperor of Mankind. This is Cran777. I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, here's the thing. To sign on to do like a GW adjacent like Warhammer style thing, the actors also need to be interested in it. And it's everyone's hunting for the next big franchise right now, and I think that's what Amazon thinks they're doing, because Amazon tends to be greenlighting things that are a little more, I guess, like indie adjacent, like them doing Invincible versus doing like a Marvel DC thing. That's an indie, it's a Kirkman indie comic. It's got the pedigree of, this guy wrote Walking Dead, but it also is them gambling on something that's relatively unknown before they put something behind it. Same with doing a Garth Ennis thing. Doing The Boys is like, that's a big gamble. Like they're betting with they've got enough money they can bet pretty hard into like things that are fairly independent. Not independent, but based on things that were independent that aren't like a 4-quadrant sure thing and are a little bit more risky. And so far it's paid off. They've made some pretty good bets. So I feel like they definitely have the balls to do this correctly. If that makes sense. It's kind of weird. I honestly think it will be Games Workshop versus Amazon that makes this less edgy and less dark and less hard. Weirdly, like I would bet of the two sides of that pitch, it's Amazon that will push for them to go harder and darker and weirder and crazier, because that's what's been winning for them the last little while, versus Games Workshop. So I don't as much as Chris Pratt was in that terrible like future perfect, what was it, Tomorrow War or whatever it was, it's freaking terrible, which is ironic because Tomorrow War is the name of a very good piece of science fiction writing that has nothing to do with that movie, which is very funny. But yeah, I don't think we'll see a Chris Pratt. I don't think they'll get that kind of star power in the beginning. I think it'll be a little more restrained, hopefully, a little more weird and crazy and muted. That's me hoping. Jack Black is an orc boy. Alan Rickson Reacher as yet another Primarch. Maybe, I don't know. I mean, maybe. I forgot he was Hawk in the Teen Titans TV show, though. I liked him as Hawk, actually. I liked the Hawk and Dove arc in that show because they were just failed, basically. Yeah, Tomorrow War was really bad. It's funny, like, It's Always Sunny in Terradelphia. Everyone's just dunking right now, which is very cute. But you never know. Zug 1974 says, I can't wait for the studio to get done so I can drive from Pittsburgh and challenge you to a game of Last Days with the Shorzy crew. Get your guts attack, you brain munchers. That would be great. I would love that. All right, Matt Tillman from Arizona says, on the same vein of discussion last week where you detailed this is a very long one, where you detailed your perspective that a grim and dark story set in our world is more of a horror, true crime, or historical dramatization piece like Chernobyl than it would be grimdark media. I'd like to cite that your episode in The Last Dark 2 as to why I think you could absolutely do a piece of media you consider grimdark media set in our world. A major part of why Last of Us 2's grimdark media in your episode is that its emotional content and the themes of trauma alongside its very dystopian setting. All that I agree with. The zombies you noted are almost just a set piece, and I would like to say that the only sci-fi of Last of Us 2 truly are the zombies. Social decay and dystopia are everywhere in the real world, both in history and in modern times. You could set a very similar story to Last of Us Part 2, along with the themes of trauma, almost anywhere. Yes, you're studying all kinds of different places in the real world, as in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. Could you simply take the zombies out, set The Last of Us to another part of the world in modern times, and it's still grimdark media? I would love to hear your thoughts. I mean, so I think I said this last week, is the point of setting it not in our world lets us comfortably examine it. Grimdark media is about taking themes that are horrifying or overwhelming or dark or, to quote Lovecraft, cyclopean or cosmic. And by adding that element, allow us to like see very human reactions to things bigger than us. And so The Last of Us 2 is about that whole idea of humanity is like a guttering flame because they've already been wiped out. Like the world's ended already. And that setting allows you to then, I think, have that journey, because all of our social constraints that are currently on us prevent you from having, without, like you said, taking it to like a third world or force majeure or disaster environment. We don't act like that, right? Law and order and the social sort of contract that we have with each other prevents the things that happen in The Last of Us Part 2 from happening in the real world. And when they do happen, it's because some type of insane event like Chernobyl, which actually happened, that we don't act in those ways. So we act out insane, hyper violent or crazy sort of like emotional themes in this grimdark media because we're on a spaceship that's been to hell, or because we're in a far future where they're bioengineering people to fight their wars on other planets, or we're trying to relight the sun, or whatever it is that is the sci-fi premise that allows us to then explore those things, because all of the social shackles come off basically. And the reason why I hesitate to do anything set in the real world is because that's the actual grim history of humanity. Like, it's not safe. It's not comfortable, and it's all very real. And so for me to have any kind of like, I couldn't have like the laughing moments I had with Justin's constantly just being tortured by an evil spaceship in a discussion about Chernobyl. Like, you just can't. There's real humanity there. That's gross. I'm not going to make a show about that. I'm not going to do that. That's talking about history, and I'm not qualified or comfortable to have those conversations. People far more qualified and comfortable than me should be discussing that stuff. I'm here to talk about art that lets us confront that stuff at a safe distance by setting it somewhere that is science fiction and fantasy, because that is the step removed that allows us to explore those themes in a safe way. It's why people indulge in horror movies and science fiction and comedy, is that you're taken to a place of safety basically and allowed to examine your own emotions and your own feelings and your own reactions to that stuff. To do anything in the real world is, you would want to have a solution for that. And I'm not qualified to do that. I don't have any solutions. I can't tell you why history or the present feels a certain way. It does, because those things are really happening. And I'm not a person, I think, that sits in any position to give people advice on how to solve those things. That is a bullshit proposal that I don't want to try and do. All I can control is my own little world, my own little sphere, and the people I care about. So yeah, I will not do that. And I will stick to the realm of science fiction, fantasy, grimdark media as art, because I think that allows us to process our own, not to scale emotions in a safe way, and to examine those things, I think, in a proper context. Jason Wagner says, still in Singapore, great topic and question for Matt. It also touches on why I don't play historical games, as they are set within living memory. Ash, do you not play any historicals on Guerrilla miniature games because you aren't interested in them, or because you don't want to spread Guerrilla miniature games too thin, like are interested in marketing? Either way, please feel free to lax the content why. For exactly the reasons I just talked about. And actually, I think that Tom Kirby, who was my old boss once upon a time, said it really well in an interview where he said, at the end of the day, the soldiers all go back in the box. Warhammer isn't about war. I'm paraphrasing him here. It's about having an entertaining, fantastical experience of the imagination with the pieces in front of you, allowing you to capture the sort of like monumental grandeur of the moment that's happening. It's not about war. It's not about violence and death. And the reason for that is, at the end of the day, all the pieces go back in the box and they come back out to march out and fight another day. It's about experiencing that moment of heroism or calamity or tragedy, again, in a safe and removed environment where you can experience war that isn't really war. It's about the idea of war and the romanticized idea of war. It isn't about actual war. It's about heroic moments that we entertain ourselves with in a safe and removed environment. And so I don't do historicals because, one, It's not that I'm not interested in history. It's that I'm not interested in dramatizing or reenacting again those things. And for much the same reasons I just discussed with the Grimdark Media stuff. And two, because I would feel compelled to try and reenact, like I'd be making a museum diorama. I feel too much of like an obligation to honor those moments by making them as accurate to history as possible. And that's just a simulation. You're trying to get, a lot of historical gaming is very much about trying to get the result that historically happened as close to as possible when you play it out, sort of, not to change history. And that's just something that I'm not as interested in doing. I like some levity and some excitement and some sort of like, I would say like humor in what I do. And that's why I don't tend to mess with historicals. I do think you can go back far enough to the point where we don't have an accurate enough picture and there's enough mythology that I'm interested in it again. So like, I love Joe McCullough's Silver Bayonet because it's not a historical game. It's like, what if there was Ghostbusters in the Napoleonic War, basically, right? Like that premise is on its face fun. I liked a lot of the Grindhouse game stuff, like their version of Space Hulk, which was called, I've forgotten. Grindhouse games made, I don't remember. It was like basically it got bought up by one point. It was adjacent to, that Secrets of the Third Reich game. It's basically Terminators in World War II fighting zombies under the Rock of Gibraltar. Great game. It's completely spaced on what it was called in my head. Maybe the chat will tell me. But like that to me is the level of I guess, incursion. Jack Fletcher got it, of what I'd like to do. So I think that's to me like where I come across that kind of stuff. And the Astragon XCS says, Ash can't comfortably make Archer references while playing Saving Private Ryan. Well, that's it, right? Like, it's not that I'm not interested in that stuff and don't have an appreciation for it. It's just not my hobby, I guess is what I'm saying. I'm interested in the artistic side of it, and you don't get a lot of room to be artistic when you're talking about history because that's pretty disrespectful. If you take a lot of artistic license when you're talking about history, especially of major world events like that. And that would be why. All right. Next up, we've got Matt Tarpley from New York. No questions this week. I'm going to have to miss the hangout just because of some health stuff. I just wanted to say thank you, Ash, for being a bright spot in my dark times. I hope that you and yours have a good holiday. Hope I'll catch you all next week. Well, I hope you have a speedy recovery, Matt. And thanks for hanging out with us the last couple weeks. Travis from Calgary says, have you seen that they're doing a Mutant Chronicles Warzone game? Warzone Eternal on Kickstarter. Could this mean a return of Warzone GMG? Yeah, Brian's doing it. And I have seen it. Jake and Brian are working on that. I don't think it funded. I think it's gone back into the development cycle, but obviously I would love to check it out. We checked out the miniatures, the 3D prints when they sent them along. And when the game goes to done, I would definitely give it a go again because I love that whole setting. And it's even something I've thought about doing with Jay for, for Throwback Thursday, is doing like the second edition of Warzone, which I think is great and has tons of great Kev White minis and stuff that go along with it. Has its own, and like Paul Bonner art. Like it was a whole other time. In fact, for Grimdark Media, I think for game picks, Mutant Chronicles Warzone is one of the ones I would love to just cover because it was so almost Warhammer 40k. It was very, and it's funny because it had a steampunk angle too before War Machine even. Like there's a lot of Warzone stuff that's worth talking about because it sits in a very interesting, I think, a very interesting space in gaming history as like the franchise that almost was. And was really big for a minute and just it fell apart for terrible reasons, which are always money related usually. Malev says, that's pretty much the one thing that has made Sludge endearing for me. It's the ability to not mess with historicals, but still mess with historicals. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was the wonderful thing that Sean did was he did all that sort of like historical, that kit bashing, that War of the Roses style, English Civil War era sort of technology of kit bashing, and then made it his own fantastic universe where you can take a step away from it and not have it be mired in history. So you can enjoy the drama and the sort of like the powerful, the powerful sort of like grandioseness of it, but you don't have to like get mired in like the actual true life events, which are usually pretty tragic and terrible and have all kinds of other ramifications. Paul Shorten says, Warlord Games blurs the lines between historical and fantasy a bit too much for my tastes. Yeah, I mean, that's it. Because Mathboy says there aren't enough space shotguns for JDUs and historicals. Yeah, I that's the thing, right? Like, it's really hard to not be disrespectful when you try to take something and like make it a bigger version than what it actually was, if that makes sense. When you try to take a moment in history and you over exaggerate certain parts of it, it just doesn't feel good, and I don't want to be part of that. Or you overly romanticize or make heroic things that weren't overly romanticized and heroic. I think there's a danger in that where it ceases to be, you cease to have the reverence for it. I think that it kind of deserves, like, it's interesting to explore and have thought exercises, but my personal hobby, it probably wouldn't work. Staying a Sprinkle says, as someone who enjoys historical games, I totally understand your position. I find it easier to send my sisters to battle on a suicide charge to get the objective than my little plastic U.S. Army men. Yeah, I think that's it, right? Like, those sisters to battle are going to go back in the box when it's done, and that they weren't ever real and they didn't have stories, and that it's make believe, so it's a bit safer, I think. Jack Fletcher says Mutant Chronicles is definitely grimdark and has a movie too. It does. It has the most inexplicable movie. So I did put up the patron poll this week for the patron produced January piece of Grimdark Media, and it's films this time. You guys get to pick the movie, and I debated as to whether or not to put Grimdark. I almost put Mutant Chronicles up there, but I'm so sure that Jay and I are going to pick it one month that I just didn't bother. I didn't bother having that be the pick because I'm sure it's going to get picked. I put up the movies that I think are all bangers that are more mass media too, because I feel like if one of us picks Mutant Chronicles, people are just going to be like, what in the hell is this? It is the most baffling movie. It feels like someone owed someone so many favors, or someone was like holding the chips on so many favors, because it is an inexplicably cast movie. I don't know how they got John Malkovich and Ron Perlman and like Thomas Jane, and I can't remember her name, but the girl who plays Go-Go in Kill Bill. Like, it is the wildest cast ever in the lowest budget sci-fi action movie of all time. They had no money and they made this movie, and I do not know how. It is a bizarre, it's worth talking about just for the production alone, because it is a bizarre film. It's like 974 says Mutant Chronicles was the first game I played where you could pop out a cover and go back in, and it was inspiring. It's funny, Mutant Chronicles does so much stuff that like today we kind of take for granted. Like, it had a D20 based attack system. It was actually very close to, without having the face-to-face rolls, its stat line is very close to the stat line for Infinity. I feel like the guys who played Infinity may have played Mutant Chronicles at some point, because it's a very similar stat block, which is very funny. Like, it has like an armor stat block. A lot of the mechanics are very similar. Like, there's a lot of like, when you look at Mutant Chronicles, you're like, whoa, really? They did that? And like early on too, which is very funny. So I'm excited to talk about Mutant Chronicles because it's a game I played quite a bit in the early 2000s, actually after its heyday even, because I was always interested in digging up dead games, and there was still lots of stuff available on the shelves for it. So it's a real banger. And I loved Kev White's sculpting, so I did a lot of it. I played quite a bit of it. Kevin Trader asked, do your kids have any interest in wargaming? And if so, what games did you get them started with? So they love board games, and we play a lot of adventure board games. They both love video games. Cash is at the stage where everything is a toy still. So he's not really interested in the rules so much as he's interested in the imagination part of it. And he has tons of miniatures. He's painted quite a few. My daughter also is interested in painting. But it's all very imagination based right now, because I mean, he's about to turn 9 and she's 10. So they're not so interested in the part where you have rules involved around it. They're more interested in the tiny imaginary worlds. And I think that's completely natural and fine. And I love that for my son. And that's where he's at right now. And as like a person who grew up in the 80s where your parents' hobbies were your hobbies, mostly so they could go do their hobbies sometimes, I have no interest in forcing my kids into anything. I want to encourage them to discover things they love. But he definitely has a fascination with tiny worlds. Like, he loves making things, and so does my daughter. So I'm just gonna let them chase that wherever it goes. Like they don't need to have rules to that. But we do love playing board games. We love playing card games. We do a lot of like breakfast card games. Like we'll just play Go Fish, or we'll play Slap, or we'll play, Uno and stuff like that. Like we're a gamified family, and they've played D&D with me now at some point too. They played Lost Mines of Fand over at the cottage. And they're more, I think it's just me just always having it around encourages them to try it, but I'm not forcing it down their throats, if that makes sense, as I'm conscientious that I'm more interested in discovering what they're interested in than I am in making them be discovered, making them be forced to be interested in something. So I just kind of present tons of options and they pick and choose what they like. I might get them to learn how to edit though. Because one, it would save me a ton of time, video editing, which is my nightmare right now. I have so much editing to do that is just like, I have so much stuff shot that isn't edited. It's crazy. And they're both interested in video creation, and that feels like a life skill, teaching them how to use Photoshop and to use Final Cut Pro and to edit and stuff like that. Because the world's just moving towards having that as a skill. So that might be the thing that their hobby ends up being, which is video production and audio production and that kind of stuff too, which I think would be super cool. And then they can be excited about whatever they want to be excited about. Kudos Boto's here. He says, sorry I'm late. My email betrayed me. I didn't get my email from Patreon. That's okay. It's not, you have to get 24 minutes left in this show. So you're all good, man. Ask some questions. Zug1974 said, also the fact that Mutant Year Zero and My Mutant Chronicles are the same universe breaks my brain every time I start thinking about it. Are they? Are the animals on Earth? Are they part of like the dark, what was it called? Oh, there was a faction in Mutant Chronicles, the dark something tribes of Earth or whatever it was. There's like a bunch of different like lost tribes. I didn't realize the mutants were in the same thing. I mean, they're the same company. I think they're all Paradox Plaza. But I didn't realize they were in the same universe. I'll have to look into that. Paul Shorten says, speaking of historical games, can you explain why I spent dollars and hours working on Legions Imperialis this week when I have an unpainted miniatures from 1990 downstairs? You're an idiot. Isn't sufficient. I don't know, man. I did get an interesting email this week though about, not email, some text from Bob in upstate New York, who's excited to do like a 3rd edition 40K thing. So I may have actually found my collaborator finally. We're going to try and get together hopefully in January to plan out doing a 3rd edition 40K thing for like my Just For Me thing, which I'd be very excited about. I'm hoping Bob and I can make that work because I've been wanting to do the 3rd edition late 90s, early 2000s thing for a while. And I have all the models to do it, and it would be good to take a break in January at some point because I have so many projects I need to get done still. So yes, I feel you. There are many 90s miniatures still to paint. Paul Shorten says, Ron Perlman speaking from the pulpit in the Mutant Chronicles is the Our Father prayer of the Irish and Gaelic, which was a very confusing experience. See, the whole movie, it melts everyone. There's different reasons it melts everyone's brains. Kim God's here and says, sorry I'm late to the party. That's okay. Atragon X says, I'm never going to get my money's worth of Cthulhu Wars if I don't get my niece and nephew to play it with me. That's true. Gizmo Math Boy says, my youngest seems to love Fire and Axe. They've got the Bloody Axe bonus every time we've played it. It's a great board game. That's awesome. I played Tonks with my kids, Kim said, which was so much fun. That's so cool. Dark Symmetry. No, Dark Symmetry was the Dark Symmetry was the bad guy. It was like the nameless thing that was taking over machines. It was almost like an AI ghost. It was like the Tribes of, I can't think it was called Tribes of Earth, Dark Tribes of Earth, something like that. It had its own source book basically, but they were like mini factions. They weren't like full factions because you never really went back to Earth because Earth was so screwed up from all the wars. Nick says, I was a bad parent. I got my young kids into Magic the Gathering, and now all they do is play RPGs online with friends over Discord and don't even come out of their rooms. My kids don't come out of their rooms very often either once they're home. But they it's funny, like my son tried to get into Pokemon cards, but it was just the collecting. He didn't ever have any interest really in playing the game. Like I tried to sit him down, I tried to learn the rules so I could teach him how to play so we could play together. He doesn't have any interest in that stuff. Like, he's weirdly non-competitive. It's more about the imagination of like seeing it happen for him. Whereas like he'll lay in bed covered in Space Marines and like terrain and like made up little like stuff and have like little adventures in his head. But then I'll be like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm playing the new DLC that I'm writing for Fallout 76 where the Space Marines fight and it's like, it's just some like headcanon thing he's got going on where he's created his own little universe. And I'm like, perfect. And I walk away from it. Like I'm all good with that. That's exactly what you should be doing at that age. Don Chayminster says, my kids have grown up loving Hero Quest. Hits the sweet spot for growth and simplicity. I'm definitely I'm definitely tempted to use the new Hero Quest. They don't get to touch mine from the 80s. It's all nicely painted. But I am tempted to have them play the new one with me because I feel like they would actually be able to they would get into it. And it's visual enough, I think, too, that they would probably get into it. Maybe I'll do that. Maybe we'll do Hero Quest. Maybe we'll redo Hero Quest and we'll do a Hero Quest thing. I think that'd be fun. All right, let's go back to some questions from the mailbag. And catch another one. Nick Butler, that video store guy, always on with the names. With the agreement to pursue creative opportunities now signed between Amazon and Games Workshop, the question is, if Amazon did a comedy grimdark, what would it look like? My follow-up question is, can we hope for Al Richard, who plays Reacher, to also join Cavill as yet another Space Marine Primarch, and if so, who? So it's a two-part question, which is fine because we already kind of covered it. Would they do a comedy? I would love for them to do something comedic, but I don't think they'll lead with that. I think they'll try and get people hooked. I think you can't. So the reason The Boys works is because it's a deconstruction of DC superheroes, right? So everybody's got enough general familiarity with things like Wonder Woman and Superman and The Flash that you can look at The Boys kind of sight unseen and go, oh, that's a parody of that's why this is subverting this. You know what I mean? I honestly don't think there's enough Space Marine zeitgeist stuff out there to make that happen. I did, however, just see a targeted ad on Instagram from Spiky Bits for their Patreon funded limited series that looks like it's going to do that for Warhammer 40,000. It's about a bunch of young boys being kidnapped and being turned into hate space haters or something like that. And it's an obviously veiled, them being turned into Space Marines. They their balls taken off. it is. I am interested to see where this one goes because it's obviously parody and I think it probably falls safely under the scope of that stuff. But man, oh man, there is some shots fired there. I think the world of deconstruction is still firmly outside of Games Workshop. I think they're establishing their brand in the video sphere still. I think that we'll see all that animation and TV stuff move away from Warhammer Plus because it will directly compete with Prime. And what may end up happening is all the Warhammer Plus stuff just ends up on Amazon as a channel. That's a big popular thing right now with Amazon is having channels under the Amazon umbrella. So I wouldn't be surprised if Warhammer Plus gets unbundled and somehow put up on Amazon at some point for it to be a channel that you can subscribe to there to get that kind of gets them on the ground running with a bunch of short form media plus Astartes. Astartes going on Prime would be a coup because that would give it a very broad audience of people that could watch it. And if they did some advertising for Prime to the demographics, because obviously Amazon has all your information, that could really light a candle under the whole thing. So I don't know. What actors? I don't give a shit. I'll be honest. I don't think Henry Cavill should act in any of them. I'm probably unpopular in this opinion that I think it doesn't do service to making it feel serious to have Cavill actually lend his face to any of it. I think it would be a bad idea. I think they should get some relatively unknowns. And he should produce and then be elevated by it. I think having any of their big hulking muscle mans just kind of it cheapens it a little bit. I honestly think you should have some I think you should have some non-heroic shit get made first and then Space Marines get made kind of last. I think you have to Dan Abnett it and be careful because Space Marines aren't cool unless they're relatively rare. They don't seem as powerful and crazy unless they're in the context of regular humans. And so you need the regular human stuff first. You need to establish the universe first. You need to show its soft white underbelly. And then you can show the stuff that is super powerful and crazy because it doesn't have any context otherwise. And I'm hoping their writers are good enough to realize that. So anybody has a Primarch, you should never see a Primarch unless they do the Horus Heresy 10 years from now. And you should only see a Space Marine after you've had a good long soak in the universe to give Space Marines some context, because there's not very many of them, and they should be contextually powerful. They should be presented the way they are by Abnett in the Abnett books. Let's see who's blowing this up. Mike Forson says, I'm super non-competitive. I remember last time I actually won a game of 40k, but it doesn't bother me in the slightest. I'm still talking about kids. Nick says, yeah, Carl Urban is an Inquisitor. No, God, no. Please, no. Please, no. The only person Carl Urban could play successfully in like an established piece of 40k media, I think, is he could play the Bounty Hunter. Yeah, he could play Eisenhorn's Bounty Hunter, whose name is completely... He doesn't show up until Hereticus or Malleus, maybe. And he's in the Ravener series more than he's in Eisenhorn. I love that guy. I can't remember his name, though, off the top of my head. Adeptus Mechanic is Mythbusters. Kudos says Sean Pertwee should be in all of it. Sure. I could have Sean Pertwee be like a down on his luck, enforcer or something like that, who gets his head blown up at some point. Nick Butler says, yeah, let Cavill produce and have control over content. He's pretty much been the keen that shows that follows source should follow the source. Yeah, I think so. Cavill is down to just executive produce, though. I mean, I think so. Mike Person says, I agree. I would love for them to do more of an Inquisitor type show rather than a true Space Marine show. Urban should be in RPDs. I mean, Urban should just be, he should just be Dread. Urban's already been in a 40k movie. He's been in Dread. Well, I think that's it. I think to be honest, like you've got to get people hooked on the idea of grimdark media, in like a more mainstream format. And right now, everyone's so exhausted, I think, with Marvel and DC trying to do like the traditional superhero media, that I think that's why you have Invincible and The Boys being so successful for Amazon. There's no superhero and that's why Daredevil, before there was really a big MCU, I think was so successful on Netflix. Like, remember when Netflix made the best Marvel content? Remember? I remember that. Like, and we're doing some member berries here stuff, but it was subversive because it was all street level stuff in Marvel. And it wasn't what the main fare from Marvel was. And then, of course, they lost it back to the Disney main studios, and it's kind of been like retconned out now. But that stuff was great. Jessica Jones was great. I actually liked Luke Cage. I thought Luke Cage was awesome because I thought Mahershala Ali as Coppermouth was fantastic. And Daredevil was bananas. It was. I mean, it hung on two great performances, but it was fantastically done. And I didn't mind the Punisher show. I thought it was fine. It was okay. It's not how I look at Frank Castle, but I thought that they did like his mental illness justice, right? The prison fight was pretty good. when he gets down and just beats a bunch of guys in a hallway, they try and redo the old boy hallway fight, but for Punisher, that was okay too. But I think you have to do that. I think you have to get us interested in your universe before you give us your big grand meal. You know what I mean? Like, you had to build up to Avengers Endgame. You have to build up to something like the Horus Heresy. We have to see the stakes and feel like we care about it first. So as much as I think the Amazon thing's cool, and like I said, I think this is just the whole posting and media push right now is just about making the money people happy, that it was a good idea, not the ink signs. Trying to make everybody feel comfortable so they can get in a nice, comfortable development cycle. But yeah, Cavill should keep his face out of it. He should just executive produce, just do all the talkies. He'll be more valuable to that production studio talking about it and maybe lending a voice somewhere or doing like cameos somewhere. Like, if they spend like 3 seasons doing something like the Inquisitor stuff with Abnett's like Inquisitor books, either Ravener or as Eisenhorn, doesn't really matter which one. Although I think Ravener's great. You could have him do the voice of Ravener, because you never see Ravener. You just have him be Ravener's voice in the big stasis chair, or you give him like a voice cameo, or you have him be like the 3 seconds of a Space Marine that you see at some point when they interact with a Space Marine for like half a millisecond, and it just solves all their problems, then wanders off. You know, like, you do that. You have him have his appearance be a big deal and not actually be like the main set piece for it, I think, if anything else. Nick Butler says, Danny DeVito. Yeah, let's get some Danny DeVito in there. Danny DeVito could be like a rogue trader. Sean Bean, random guardsman, just dies immediately. Yep. Malev to Shinobi says, or sorry, Malev says, in high school I wrote a sort of love-fueled short story based on a boy who loved a girl in a hive city, young adult aged. The city comes under attack and he labors to reach her, a simple A to B. That's awesome. I mean, I think that's kind of what those young adult Warhammer novels were supposed to be. Are they still making those? I feel like they gave up on it. I feel like they tried really hard for like a minute and then they were just like, no, there's no money here. Like, we can't do this. We've stopped recruiting new customers anyway, so let's just stop. Kudos Buddha says Danny DeVito is that Imperial Fist guy who is short but just kept lifting. Yeah, I can't remember that guy's name. I know who you're talking about though. He has like the missile launcher and he's as wide as he is tall basically. Doug Jones will turn up playing something Eldar. Matt Berry, regular humanist Astartes. Yeah, maybe. I don't know if Jack Fletcher says Urban was already in Arbites and Dread and a Space Marine in Doom. I don't know if he was really a Space Marine in Doom. He kind of was. Dwayne Johnson was more of a Space Marine because he was a Hulk in that movie. And then Malev says, but I imagine he'd succumb to chaotic powers and get like sweet superpowers where he uses them to reach her. It's still a funny story to think about because there's no romance in 40k. Not really, no. Unless you count like the Inquisitor who is having like an on again, off again with Caiaphas Cain and writing about him for other Inquisitors to find amusing. Because it's all sealed anyway, so she can tell like what a coward he is and what a terrible person he is. Because it's only the other Inquisitors are going to read it because it's all in the Inquisitorial Archive. It's like her memoir. Maybe that one kind of counts because their relationship is basically why the story's getting told. Because otherwise it's all like locked up because the Imperial propaganda needs him to never not be a hero. So his memoirs are like sealed, but she just writes it all down and like curates it for him because she the other Inquisitors think it's funny. That's such a dark series when you really start thinking about it. Nick Butler says Calva could be a hell of a narrator. Sure, yeah, he could, and then like you could reveal the narrator is somebody. You know, like there's a bunch of stuff you could do with that, writing wise. I think that we're in a fantastic place though, where there's like a pretty unlimited budget. You know, like if you can lose that much money on Rings of Power, you can definitely lose that much money on a cool 40k piece of media. You just got to get the writing right and the tone right, and you have to not give it all away up front. I think that the biggest danger I see for an Amazon series or any kind of like big budget series around Games Workshop's IPs is people are going to feel compelled to do more exposition than it needs. Leave the audience wanting to know more. There's so much media out there already for them to consume. Like, let them treat the audience like grown-ups is a hard thing for people to do these days. And there's way too much explaining and sort of gamified exposition done, I think, in media in general today. Like, not just with like any particular property, but like we are fed media as pablum, and if it's presented the other way, it's presented as like giant mystery boxes which never get answered. Like that was the problem with Lost, was they invented the mystery box and then you could never say what was inside the mystery box, and when it came time to say it was inside the mystery box, it was just the thing everybody assumed it was in the beginning anyway. Yeah, so don't make it a mystery box, but also don't overly explain everything and let people be hungry to know more about the universe. It's really hard to write that. It's such a tricky thing. But this property in particular benefits from that because a dystopia in general benefits from people wondering what the story is going to be, which is why I think they're better off making new media than exploring current Games Workshop media, especially in the beginning. Because otherwise you're not going to hook people that you haven't already hooked. And anyone who's coming to this knowing what it is already is going to put their own vision of what Games Workshop's universes should be onto whatever these stories are and come in with their own imported bias. You're doing this because you're trying to broaden your audience, and that means you need to write it in a way that both intrigues people who already are familiar with this stuff, so you don't give them too much because they'll just leap to a bunch of conclusions otherwise or give it all away. And you're trying to get people who have no idea what this is to go, that made me think. I'm going to think more about that after I watch it and wonder what the next thing is. But without it being a mystery box. No mystery boxes. I hate mystery boxes. I want a tiered sitcom. Oh, Paul Sharton says, when I think of live action Necromunda, I imagine the series potential to be garbage like Cleopatra 2525. And then Nick Butler said, thank you. Now I have the theme to that in my head. I love that you guys know Cleopatra 2525. That was a YTV TV show here. YTV was like a youth television channel in Canada in like the 90s and 2000s. And Cleopatra 2525 was like one of the most garbage sci-fi shows of all time. But I think it was New Zealand. I think it was from the era of like New Zealand TV, where you had like all of the Xenas and the Herculeses coming out of New Zealand. I think Cleopatra 2525 was as well. My God, it was so bad. It was such a great, bad sci-fi premise. And I appreciate that you've brought it back to my memory. I'm not doing you guys need to like Robin Hood GameStop the polls to get me to do Cleopatra 2525. I will put it on though, just for you, Paul and Nick. I'll put Cleopatra 2525 on the Grimdark Media for a video at some point, but you're gonna have to really rally the support. I don't know what the patron level is for a Cleopatra 2525 Grimdark Media. That's a big ask, making me relive that. Atragonic says, I want a Tyranid sitcom. Don James says more garbage sci-fi. Like dinosaur sitcoms with Tyranids? Yes, it could be brilliant. Oh my God. Like, you mean like the Puppet Dinosaurs TV show with the Not the Mama? That would be, oh God. You need some like Henson level Muppetry for some Tyranid Muppets. That could be interesting. I could see that. What else we got? Ralph Schleman says, yeah, trust the imagination and intelligence of the audience. I miss that a lot nowadays. It's become very rare. Just lead people on the long tail of the content available. Yes, exactly. Yeah, just get people wanting to engage with what you've already made. Don't make us an adaptation. Make us something new that makes people want to go and check out all the adaptations you already have. I mean, that's just even good business. You know what I mean? For anybody doing that stuff. And this has devolved into the Amazon discussion now, I think. Gizmo Math Boy says, yeah, compare and contrast Andor and Ahsoka. Absolutely. I think that's a interesting, Victoria Pratt and Gina Torres for Cleopatra 25. Oh my God. Nick and Paul are going to make this happen now. I do think it's better business. Yeah. And this is turning into an Amazon announcement thing now, of course, because everybody's excited about it in the chat. So why not? Let's just talk about it. This is like the biggest marketing coup. This is the amount of money that's going to get ponied up for this to happen, which will then make tons of money. And this is a real step towards being a brand management company. We talk about becoming a brand, right? Like Disney gets paid because people go see their movies, but they really get paid when they sell the Sweetest Plum, which is all of the stuff that is the ancillary products with that same picture on it. You know what I mean? With like the likeness of Thanos and Infinity Gauntlets and toys and licensed Lego. Like, it's when you have the thing, the marquee product that gets everybody to come along and buy the merchandise around it. That's the real opportunity here, is if they get a hit show, then they get to sell all the stuff that goes with a hit show, like models. And like, it opens up the idea of being a brand management and intellectual property management company in a huge way. And so, yeah, making original content and then having them get hooked into the ecosystem of stuff you already have is way more profitable as a business. It's just a good business idea for them to do that. And like I said, make something original. Space Gamer says, one of the best parts of Fury Road was the lack of exposition amongst the many best parts, because it's such a good movie. 100%. Again, if you want to talk about visual storytelling, that movie is an example of why George Miller is such a great visual storyteller. We talked about that so much during the Grimdark Media for Astartes, how it is primarily a visual story. It is doing all of its exposition not through speech, not through dialogue. And that, I think, is where the money comes in as being the big opportunity. You can make something overwhelmingly cool to look at that asks us questions. And I think, like, I don't know if you know this, but they're involved with Weta too. You got Weta Workshop hanging out with Games Workshop doing stuff. Weta plus Amazon plus Games Workshop is like, there's a lot of potential there. Weta is pretty much the premier accessories and costume and set design and art design, workshop in the world, as far as that stuff goes. Like, eat your hearts out, Industrial Light and Magic. Like, you had your time. There's even 20 years later, they are still a collective of incredibly talented people who've come and gone, but incredibly talented people. So yeah, I don't know what the future holds, but man, if you'd told 23-year-old me that this was coming, I would probably have never believed you. And we're talking about the culmination of like 20 years of people spitballing about shit on the internet. Who hasn't done like a celebrity cast? Who hasn't done their favorite 90s wrestlers as the Primarchs, right? Like, who hasn't done that? Who hasn't had, Mortarion as the Undertaker? And I could just keep going. And Ric Flair as Fulcrum, and and Kurt Angle as Rogel Dorn. Yeah, you could just go on and on and on. What it feels like modern day ILM, they are, yeah. I think so too. The money wheel goes, it's exactly it. If it's all show don't tell, you get the stakes from the scenes, the unfurl for sure. Yeah, I would be completely down for that. And yes, Kevin Trader, you're right. The target audience for this thing can't be existing fans. That's not where the opportunity is, and I'm sure that's also where where an agreement like this happens. That's the opportunity, and no one's blind to the opportunity being mass market. Mass market is the clear opportunity here. One side has the mass market, the other one has the slightly indie adjacent feeling from a mass market point of view property. Like, The Boys is a best-selling comic. It wasn't indie in and of itself. It was a subversive Garth Ennis comic, right? So it's still a pretty safe bet. Same with Invincible was a success. It was a successful run for Kirkman. I think this has the same feel for it as that from Amazon's point of view, and that's what they're trying to rent. And then from the flip side, it's Workshop trying to rent the fact that it's a big mainstream audience that you have access to. It's the world, basically. Jack Fletcher says, I love visual storytelling. Gendy Tartakovsky's Samurai Jack tells a tight story every episode in 22 minutes and with hardly any dialogue. Samurai Jack's a great example of that. And what a great art style, too. Like, what a great, weird, not traditional to like a somewhat adult storytelling style piece of art. It's funny. I almost did a Grimdark Media Christmas special on a cartoon. Maybe I still will. I have an idea for a Grimdark Christmas special for you guys, which would be me by myself, but it is cartoon adjacent, which I think I might do. It's very grimdark, but also very funny, which is why I kind of want to do it. All right, we're done. We're at the end. Nick Power says, right, I got to leave you and bang out of here before the Hive Fleet descends on the workshop. Catch you Tuesdays for the catch up. All right, well, I think that is it. I think we're done. I think we have successfully talked about the Amazon deal because that was going to dominate today's news cycle anyway, so I'm not surprised that happened. And thanks so much for hanging out. I am probably still going to do this on Christmas Day, which is next Monday. So for all those of you who want to hang out Christmas Day, it might be a bit later in the day than normal, but I think I'm still going to do this. So stay posted. I'll either do like a Patrons Before Christmas and do it maybe the night before. No, I'll probably do it the day of, or maybe Boxing Day. Maybe we'll do a Boxing Day special. Let's see, yeah. But stay posted because I'm still going to do one of these next week. I just haven't decided how and when. But thanks for hanging out. Thanks for being patrons. Thanks for all you awesome people who put questions in the mailbag. I hope I answered everybody's question for the most part to their satisfaction. And if not, then they were at least honest. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your week as we wind towards the end of the year. And I will see you next week at some point, and I'll keep you guys posted in the patron chat. And if you're watching this in the future, thanks for checking out the recap on Tuesdays. And yeah, see you later.